Yo, what is up guys, Daleboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this weekend we have a very interesting fight going down. Of course this bout goes down on Saturday the 10th of June, takes place at Madison Square Garden in New York, and that bout is between Josh Taylor, the WBO super lightweight champion, and Teofimo Lopez, former lightweight champion. Very interesting fight in my opinion. There's really a lot on the line for both fighters here, and one of the dynamics I like about this fight that adds a bit more spice to it is that both of these guys once upon a time were really highly regarded by a large portion of boxing fans. Of course, Josh Taylor was the former undisputed super lightweight champion. He held all the belts going through really good competition. We're talking Regis Prograis, Ivan Baranchyk when Baranchyk was a killer, Jose Ramirez, Victor Postal, etc. He went through a really good run of competition, beating Victor Postal. He beat Ivan Baranchyk when Baranchyk was a bit of a killer. He beat Jose Ramirez, Regis Prograis. He beat really good fighters. Then the Jack Catterall fight happened, a fight in which many expected him to win comfortably. However, that wasn't the case. He ended up winning the fight, on paper at least, but it was a very controversial decision. A fight in which Jack Catterall dropped Josh Taylor and outboxed him for many rounds in my opinion. Many people felt he lost that fight. Since then, that was February of 2022. Since then, Josh Taylor hasn't even fought. And of course, he's lost all of his titles, apart from the WBO title. As for Teofimo Lopez, once again, impressive fighter at lightweight, knocked out Richard Comey, who's a good fighter, to become champion. And then he pulls off a really good win over Vasily Lomachenko. At this point in time, it looked like the world was at his feet. Then came George Kambosos, a fight that took a long time to make due to monetary issues with the purse bid. The fight finally happened. Teofimo was expected to win and win well. However, no, he got dropped. He engaged in a bit of a war, and he ended up losing to George Kambosos, a guy who he was a massive favourite over. And ever since then, Teofimo, in my opinion, hasn't looked quite the same. He doesn't exude that same confidence. You know, people question his mentality and have questioned it after the loss to George Kambosos. But since then, he has picked up a couple of wins. He beat Pedro Campa in pretty good fashion. And he also beat Sandor Martin, a fight in which he got dropped, but I felt he won. Nevertheless, didn't look very good in my opinion. So both guys were riding on highs, but have hit career low points, I would say. So yeah, the winner of this fight regains a lot of momentum that they lost. However, the loser, I think a loss here. I know boxing fans sometimes read too much into losses, and sometimes they are too harsh on fighters who lose. But in regards to this fight, I think whoever loses is in a bad position, I really do, considering how the last 18 months of their careers have gone, retrospectively. But yeah, there's a lot on the line for both guys, and that makes this fight all the more interesting. But anyway, let's briefly break down the tale of the tape, and after that I will briefly break down what I believe each guy should do to stand the best chance of winning. And at the end of the video, I will make my actual prediction. So let's look at the tale of the tape here. So Josh Taylor has a perfect record of 19-0, 13 of his 19 wins coming by way of knockouts. Teofimo Lopez, on the other hand, has a record of 18 wins and 1 defeat, 13 of his 18 wins coming by way of knockouts. So both guys have had 19 fights as pros, but I would say Josh Taylor's competition overall has been better. His resume's got more depth to it, and he's fought more eclectic styles, a broader variety of styles. Both guys, of course, had decent amateur careers, but I would say Josh Taylor is the more experienced guy in this fight. Josh Taylor is listed as 5'10", with a 69.5-inch reach, whereas Teofimo Lopez is listed as 5'8", with a 68.5-inch reach. So Josh Taylor is 2 inches taller, and he has a 1.5-inch reach advantage. So Taylor is taller and longer, but he's also just the bigger fighter in general. Josh Taylor is quite a big super lightweight. In fact, many people, I would say, expected him to be at welterweight by now, but no, he is still at super lightweight, and he's big at the weight, there's no doubt about it. I'd imagine he's going to go in there heavier than Teofimo Lopez on fight night, so the size advantage of Josh Taylor is to be taken into account. However, at this point in time, making 140 can't be easy on Josh Taylor's body. So yeah, Taylor's got the size advantage, I would say, but what's it taking out of him? So that could work one of two ways, in my opinion. Josh Taylor is a southpaw, whereas Teofimo Lopez is an orthodox fighter. Will that be an advantage to Josh Taylor? I mean, potentially. Obviously, Teofimo struggled against Sandor Martin to a certain degree. Also had problems against Lomachenko. Both guys, of course, are southpaws. Maybe Taylor's southpaw style will give Teo problems, but Teo has seen southpaws before, so I don't think it's a massive factor, to be perfectly honest. In terms of age, Josh Taylor is 32 years old, whereas Teofimo Lopez is 25 years old. Now that could be interesting. Again, going back to the weight, Josh Taylor making 140 at 32 years of age could be a problem. Not only that, I would say, he's just got more wear and tear on his body, both in the ring and outside it. Taylor's had some physically grueling fights over the years. Prograis, Baranchik, Ramirez, Catterall, etc., Postal. He's had hard fights. Teo's not taken that sort of punishment, really, aside from the Kambosos fight. And also outside the ring, Taylor, in the UK at least, he doesn't have the reputation of living his life outside the ring, so there's that as well. So yeah, Taylor's older, more experienced, but on the flip side, Teofimo, I would say, is fresher out of the two. So there's that as well. But anyway, now the tale of the tape is out of the way, let's briefly break down what I believe each guy should do to win, and at the end of the video I will make my prediction. I will say though, I am in two minds about this fight, which makes it good, which makes it interesting. I guess we'll start with Teofimo Lopez. I think for Teofimo Lopez, the worst thing he could do in this fight is to get involved with Josh Taylor too early on. We saw against George Kambosos, Teofimo Lopez came out like a bat out of hell. He was leading with power shots, neglecting his jab. He went in there expecting to run over Kambosos. As soon as he landed, he expected Kambosos to fall. But that never happened. Kambosos took the shots, and he was able to time Teofimo in the exchanges. Josh Taylor has that type of craftiness as to where he could pull something similar off. Taylor's got a very adept right uppercut, very sneaky check right hook as well, out of that southpaw stance. The type of shots that are effective when you're punching with fighters. Josh Taylor has those sort of crafty punches as to where he could take advantage of an aggressive Teofimo. So for me, early on in this fight, Teofimo needs to be taking a look at Josh Taylor. To me, he should be prodding and probing with his lead hand, sticking it out there, seeing whether he can draw a reaction from Taylor. And of course, if he does, try to throw that counter right hand. Teo's got a really good pull counter, so potentially he could try and bait Taylor in early and try to land that shot. But early on, if I'm Teo, I'm not taking unnecessary risks. I'm not getting involved in a firefight early on. I'd be taking a look at Taylor, again, popping the jab, feinting the jab, half step back, feinting the right hand, just gauging what Taylor has, because I know Taylor's taller and longer, and he can box on the outside, but it's not like Josh Taylor is a master boxer on the outside. To me, Taylor's best work is on the inside and at mid-range. He can box on the outside, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's great at it, to be honest. I think Teo can sit on the outside and take a look at Taylor, because maybe, again, although Josh has the height and reach advantage, bear in mind, Teo has the speed advantage. So if it becomes a battle of lead hand control, both guys are prodding and probing, and it's a close round, maybe Teo can use his speed to beat Taylor to the punch enough, to beat him to the jab enough, as to where he steals the early rounds. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility. I don't think either guy is great on the outside personally, but I think Teo's got the athleticism to potentially give Taylor trouble on the outside. So again, if I'm Teo early on in this fight, I would try to be elusive, try to be awkward, try not to give too much away, and, just be tricky for Josh Taylor. And while he's at it, take the counterpunch opportunities that are there, but don't get too greedy, I would say. Don't hold the feet and invite Josh Taylor and his pressure. Because if it becomes that sort of fight early on, a war of attrition, you would imagine that favours Taylor more. You would imagine. And ultimately, that's what I would advise Teo to do throughout this fight personally. Just try to frustrate Taylor. Because Taylor's the type of guy who does fight on emotions, as does Teo, to be honest. So that same argument could be used against Teo, but I think Taylor fights on emotions. When he's had a bad round, or when he's having a bad moment, he'll try and get you back. And sometimes that can result in openings, mistakes, and for a quick-handed guy who can counter with good timing like Teo, that could be to his benefit. So I would really be focusing on trying to frustrate Taylor. Because if he manages that, Taylor has the temperament as to where he will make mistakes. And sometimes that relentlessness and that mean streak of Taylor is to his benefit, as we've seen in fights like Prograis, for example. But sometimes it can be, a detriment as well. Teo needs to make it a detriment. Also, one more thing. In regards to the counterpunching of Teo, primarily his best counterpunch is that pull counter right hand. And so he's got a decent left hook counter as well. I want to see a lead uppercut from Teofimo Lopez. One thing about Josh Taylor I've noticed, he's quite a tall guy for 140. He's 5'10". But when he jabs, he's a southpaw obviously. When he jabs, he's got a horrible habit of sometimes leaning his head over his lead knee. And this mainly happens when Taylor is fighting on the front foot, when he's really aggressive. But sometimes he'll throw the jab and he'll really kind of lean in with it and kind of fall in at times. And again, in those opportunities, I think the lead uppercut, or a lead uppercut for Teofimo, could be a very effective punch against Taylor. Also, if you're Teofimo, listen, there's going to be times when he has to fight fire with fire, I'm sure. It's a fight, right, after all. It is a fight, but in those moments where he is holding his feet with Taylor, I think Teo would be very, very, very wise to go to the body, given the fact that Taylor may be struggling at 140. He's a big super lightweight, he's 32 years old, been making the weight for a long time now. So in those moments when you're fighting fire with Taylor, I think Teo would be very wise to go to the body. Try to really test that gas tank of Josh Taylor. And not only that, just try and sharpshoot to the body as well from the outside. Jab to the body, lead right to the body, etc. Mix up your feints to disguise those shots, feint upstairs, go downstairs, etc. I think body work for Teofimo could be very beneficial for him in this fight. That's easy to say, right? I know body work's always important, but especially when you've got a guy who may be struggling to make the weight. But yeah, for me, Teofimo, he would be wise to try and make this a low output affair, to try and lower the pace of this fight, and have it almost as a tit-for-tat type of fight, where maybe the rounds are close, but Teo's speed, his athleticism, may sneak him rounds. Because let's be honest, Teofimo is definitely the more eye-catching puncher. When he lands shots, it just looks more snazzy, more snappy, more sexy, I'd say, right? So yeah, for me, Teo needs to make this a low output affair. As for Josh Taylor, I would advise the complete opposite, of course. Taylor is the bigger man. You would assume he's the stronger man. I think Josh Taylor's strong suit is at mid-range and on the inside. I think mid-range might be dicey against Teofimo Lopez. It might be risky because Teo can shorten his punches to mid-range and counter effectively. He can alter that right hand and throw it as like a shorter overhand right, which could be dangerous at mid-range in the exchanges. Also, he's got a pretty decent left hook as well. And of course, Taylor is susceptible to an uppercut at mid-range as well. So for me, Taylor in this fight needs to be spending time stuck to Teofimo, stuck on his chest, really trying to utilise that size advantage against Teofimo. Needs to be careful coming in. He needs to be very careful. So I want to see Josh Taylor utilise that high guard. I've seen him utilise it throughout his career in various fights, but he switches kind of like in and out of it. Sometimes he'll kind of leave that lead hand low, but sometimes he'll use that high guard. I think in this fight, a good consistent high guard could be very crucial for him. And obviously, he needs to be applying pressure on Teo, cutting the ring off, not following Teo around in straight lines, because against a quick-handed counterpuncher, Teo can exploit that. He needs to be taking steps to his left, to his right, steps to the side, changing things up, cutting the angles off on Teo. He needs to be making Teo really fight for the space and really always having to be using those feet, but not on his own terms, you know, because that's a lot more tiring when you're pressuring a guy. Even if you're not throwing punches, if you're pressuring effectively and you're cutting the ring off, you're closing the escapes, and you're making this guy really work his movement, that can tire a guy out. Golovkin is a really good example of that, a prime Golovkin, and he would tire guys out just from his excellent footwork coming forwards, not just his punching power, but how he would cut the ring off, how he would close distance, how he would really infuse that anxiety on his opponents. That drains your gas tank. So Taylor needs to be, in my opinion, fighting behind that high guard as he's pressuring Teo, popping that jab, a hard jab, and trying to walk Teo down. You know, pushing him against the ropes, pushing him in the corner, trying to get Teo stationary, then collapse the pocket and work. Teo on the inside, in my opinion, isn't really that great at defending himself. He can throw a few shots on the inside, like a chopping overhand right, uppercut, etc. But overall, I don't think Teo's that good defensively on the inside, and I see him as a guy who could potentially be overwhelmed in a barrage of punches. So yeah, Taylor needs to collapse the pocket and work on the inside. Also, I don't think Taylor should be scared of going into the clinch against Teo. If he can really force that type of fight on Teo, you would imagine Teo may be looking to clinch to get a respite. But honestly, I don't think Taylor should be worried about that all that much, because Taylor, he is actually quite good. He's quite good at getting a free hand in the clinch and still working. You know, using that size to maul you up close, etc. Even in the clinch, I don't think that would be good for Teo personally. So in the clinch, make it as uncomfortable as possible. Again, get that free hand going, try to maneuver Teo around, push him about, etc. Make it rough, make it horrible, drag Teo into that sort of fight, and also test his gas tank. I know I've been saying, you know, Taylor's gas tank may be questionable now due to the weight cut, but, you know, Teo himself, you know, can he fight at a high pace for 12 rounds? At times he struggled with it against Camboso, so who knows? Who knows? And of course, for bodywork, Taylor's a brilliant body puncher, particularly that right hook to the body, one of Taylor's best shots in my opinion. And one thing about Teo, he is kind of side on at times, and he gives that side of his body up, so the right hook to the body could be there for Taylor, but he would need to be careful not to get countered by Teo's left hook to the head. That's one thing to look out for when Taylor's trying to throw that right hook to the body. But for me, again, Taylor needs to make this fight rough. He needs to make it a bit of a war of attrition, I would say. and try to stick on Teo's chest, try to work up close. Because to me, going tit for tat with Teo, you know, engaging in like an outside type of fight, could be very risky. Again, it's not that I think Teo's great from the outside, but he's quicker, he's more elusive, I would say, and he's more of a sharpshooter with his punches. So even if those sort of like those moments are close on the outside, you would imagine judges would favour Teo's work because he's more flashy, because he's more explosive. So I would try to avoid that if I was Josh Taylor. But who knows? Maybe Taylor is technically good enough to outbox Teo in an outboxing type of fight. But who knows? Who knows? But yeah, for me, this fight is very hard to call. I've actually gone back and forth on it, to be honest. I can see either guy winning this fight. It's hard to gauge where both guys are at right now, from my estimation, especially Taylor, considering he's not fought since February of 2022 and didn't look good when he did. Teo's not exactly set the world alight either and hasn't fought a guy like Taylor at 140. I think both guys, it's hard to gauge where they're at. I'm gonna say this is the safe bet. And I'm not convinced by this, by the way, but I'm going to go with Josh Taylor in a very competitive points win. Wouldn't be shocked if it's a split, a majority, or just a close UD. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think both guys will have their moments. When it's on the inside, I'd imagine Taylor wins those rounds, wins those exchanges. But Teo can sharpshoot. He can land really good one at a time shots, eye-catching shots, and in rounds where the action is lower, that can see Teo win rounds. I also believe both guys can actually get stopped in this fight as well. It's one of those fights as to where like Taylor could get knocked out, Teo could get knocked out, either guy could win on points, it could be a draw. There's no real result in this fight that would surprise me. Maybe an early knockout I don't see for either guy. But aside from that, man, there's not really a result in this fight that would surprise me. But I'm going to go with a safe bet and say Josh Taylor close on points. But it's one of those fights where I'm not convinced, I'm not confident, and I could very well be wrong. But anyway, share your thoughts on this fight. Who do you see winning? Who have you got and how? Let me know in the comments below. I'm looking forward to this one, I can't lie. I'm looking forward to it. So share your comments below. Beanie Guy Delboy. Peace.